On today's episode of The Dead Life, we'll be hearing from Kim Copeland. She has over 20 years of experience as a hospice RN and energy medicine practitioner. She co-authored the book, The Last Breath. She's here with me today to share her story with us. You can follow me on Instagram at Medium Allison, on my Facebook fan page, and on my YouTube channel. And you can see me live in Dallas, Texas on February 12th. For ticket information, go to AllisonDubois.com. Well, Kim, welcome to The Dead Life.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
I think my listeners are going to be fascinated by your story, so we're really happy to have you here. And I put some thought into the questions, unlike sometimes when you do a podcast or a TV show, like I get asked the same 5 questions all the time. And I'm like, oh, okay. And you can tell when somebody put thought into it. So I hope that comes through here.
Thank you.
When you were little, did you naturally try to heal things? And I was just curious about this because, you know, innately you want to lay your hands on something or an animal. Many gifted people often feel compelled in childhood to start practicing without realizing that they're doing what they're doing, you know? So I was just curious.
Yes, what I actually do remember is my connection to animals. And absolutely, I always knew that we were heart to heart, soul to soul with animals, and I had great empathy for their feelings. It's
Yes.
almost like I could see inside their mind, and I
Hmm.
still today, can see inside their mind. Yes, so definitely with the hands-on healing with the animals, maybe a little bit to myself, but more with the animals.
I love
Yeah.
that. And it's interesting because people assume that people with a gift, that we have all of the gifts and that we're all drawn to exactly the same things. And that's not the case. We have different personalities. Some people are more in tune with animals. Some people are more in tune with the dead. Some people are more in tune with dying. It just depends on what you're drawn to. I remember being a little girl, and I never claimed to be a healer. I'm sort of the opposite. If I want to help somebody pass, I probably could lay my hands on them, but bringing them back, probably not. And I just remember having a cat and I just felt connected to the cat. Like I could feel what the cat was feeling. And I think that people always ask why females tend to be, there's more intuitives that are female. And it's just because we're supposed to be emotionally available as children and boys are
Oh
sort of
yeah.
shut down more. So I think that
Hmm.
as little girls, we feel very free in trying out our sensitivities and our connections with those around us. And I
I
think that's why
agree.
there's more women in the industry.
Yes, and there is they say women's intuition. I mean, there is something about that because does seem to be more women interested in this kind of work.
Sure.
You know. Uh-huh.
I also think we like to talk. We're communicators.
Yes, yes.
So we don't have a problem communicating what we're picking up on or feeling. And I think
Hmm.
sometimes men can be a little challenged in that department of
Uh-huh.
conveying emotional topics. So
Uh-huh.
I think
Yes,
that might be
yes.
another thing. But when did you know that you wanted to work in hospice?
Well, nursing was a little bit my second career,
Hmm.
but I was already doing home care nursing, and I saw a newspaper article about the local hospice that had dog therapy.
Hmm.
And so it was like, okay, that's where I need to work. Plus, they
Okay.
had music, they had art, they did Reiki. So,
Yeah.
it was very holistic. And I kept applying until I got in, actually.
What state is that in?
Colorado,
Okay. Some states are more
Pi-
open. That's why I was curious.
Pikes Peak Hospice. And it was it was a wonderful experience. I was even able to do shamanic drumming with my patients.
Oh, wow.
So help them with a drum beat, help them go through. Actually, the way I did it was use a flower,
Hmm.
have them imagine they're going through the middle of the flower with the drum beat, and they go into the other world. It's like practicing to see
Wow.
the spirit world before they have to go. And so it was very calming for them to say, oh, well, there are going to be people waiting for me.
I love that. A lot of people ask me, they say, why are people afraid to die? And I think they don't know what to expect. So if you can give them a visualization technique such as that to get them in line and okay that they're going somewhere that they want to be, that
Yes,
it takes the fear out of the process of dying to a great extent. And I
that's
think
right.
spiritual people tend to live fuller, lives because we know
Yes.
it counts while we're here, but we also know that we might have to come back if we don't get to everything we needed to accomplish in this lifetime.
Yeah. Don't wait to the end.
No, and I
Don't
think
wait.
no, it's
Yeah.
so true. And the people that I have talked to that think we're worm food when we die, for lack of a better way of putting it, I always feel bad for them because
Yeah.
they carry the most fear at the time of death.
Yes.
They seem to be the most afraid of all
That is
people
true.
to pass. So,
Yes. Yes.
and we know how to hold on to life because we've been doing that since we drew our first breath, but nobody really teaches us how to die. So I think what
Right.
you're doing is extremely important for people to be able to be mentally, spiritually, and physically prepared for
Yes.
what the end could look like for them.
Right. Right. And a lot of people are afraid of the pain
Yeah.
too.
They're
Yeah.
afraid of how they're going to die. And I
Yes.
always, I've always had people say they seem to assume you only die of a heart attack or cancer. And, I've seen some very unusual passings, and I assure them there are other ways to go. I find that people that die of heart attacks, when I bring them through, they say it feels like a punch to the chest and that it
Hmm.
wasn't that bad. And that's
Right.
sort of reassuring to know. I'm like,
Yep.
okay, a heart attack, good way to go. Got it. And then, but cancer seems to be what people worry about, that and dementia
Yes.
the most. They don't want to
Yes.
lose their
Yes.
faculties and they don't want their body to be emaciated. And it seems to be two of the big ones there.
Yes. What I find though, that when you have the time to
Hmm.
prepare, especially in hospice, then it's a much easier transition when they've been able to say goodbye.
Right.
And that's what when it's a long when it's a lingering death like that, then it gives them time. And you see the most.
Sorry, my
Oh, that's okay. Yeah.
allergies.
Oh well, I've been I've been coughing lately myself. So,
No.
but the when they get to say goodbye, I think it's a
Yeah.
much easier time for the family and the person who's dying.
And I do hear often that, and honestly, I'm not wired to be there at the time that someone's dying. That part scares me because I'm good with the dead. The dead don't scare me at all. The living, being in pain and in that
Yeah.
transition
Yeah.
doesn't feel right to me, even though it's such a
Uh-huh.
natural thing to experience. For instance, when I looked at my dad in his casket, he didn't look like himself. And that
Yeah.
bothered me very much. What happens to the body when the soul leaves? So, thank you for being one of those people that can be there to help in the transition. And I
Mhm.
hear hospice nurses describe it as a very beautiful experience, and that often the person that passes will call out to somebody in the room that you can't see. I
That's
heard
right.
Betty White did that with her husband
Mm.
Alan, and
Oh
I
yeah.
think that's so reassuring to
Yeah.
know that
Yep.
that they're there. I know from the talking to the dead because they show where they're standing when the person's dying. But I love hearing what you see when you're
Yeah.
there with the living as they transition. Do you find a common theme with them?
Oh, well, what you say about the calling the name, very
Hmm.
common. I
Yeah.
mean, it's actually abnormal not to have that happen.
Hmm.
So it's very common. And then also, I see people walking even in the middle of the night. My very first hospice patient, his name was Bill. I remember him very distinctly. He was only 32 years old, but he would walk in the middle of the night to sit at the kitchen table, light a candle, and talk to unseen others. He did this for like a month before he passed.
Wow.
So, and his parents were there with him, and so they would see it. They didn't wake him up because they thought he was sleepwalking.
Right.
But so we know that he was planning. They were
Sure.
planning. I see that a lot. Absolutely see that a lot. When I see also what I call people become more like mediums, I say, as they're dying. They start
Yeah.
seeing the other side. And there's usually parties.
Hmm.
They're getting ready for that. And I mean, I've been witness to that as well. So now
Hmm.
I'm kind of developed a shared near death awareness. So I can kind of, if I get close to the body, I
Hmm.
actually can go into their space a little easier to where they are. It's
Sure.
really interesting. Within 3 feet, there's a difference. So,
Right.
um, it's wonderful. I see the people change their clothes.
Hmm.
So when they're meeting, like if and even the people who are dying, they'll say, well, they're dressed in, everyday clothes or whatever.
Right.
But then when they change their clothes into like a suit
Uh-huh.
or a tuxedo or something, I always know it's within 24 hours they're going to go.
Okay.
It's because they're getting ready for the party.
I
Like
love that.
now
That's
it's this.
interesting.
That's how I know. When I see that, it's like, okay, yep, 24 hours
That's
or
so
less.
interesting. Yeah. So some guys actually put a tuxedo on, huh? That's the way to
Yes.
go.
If
Walk that
if
red
they're
carpet.
well, if they're going to get married again,
Right.
you know?
Right. And it makes
Yeah.
sense when somebody physically becomes weaker, when we start losing our body, your spiritual and your mental acuity becomes more heightened. So it makes
Yes.
sense to me that they would do something like that and be talking to the other side towards the end because they're spiritually getting tuned up.
Yes. Absolutely. Yeah. Exactly how I see it. Spirit's getting bigger, the body's getting smaller. Um,
So do you,
yes.
people always ask me this, do you have like some like most memorable hospice experiences? Would it be the one that you just spoke of, or are there some that
No.
stand out to you that are just snippets of your favorites?
Yes, I do. I have several.
Oh, share. Spill.
Okay. So, this is a very interesting one. I say interesting. This one lady, when I first met her, she was in a non-responsive. And
Hmm.
at that point, we say coma or semi-coma. And I met her one day. I went home and I did some spiritual clearing in my home. I had a man come and he did, just general spiritual clearing. And when
Hmm.
he was done, I saw behind him, I know this is going to sound a little weird, but I saw ETs behind him. You might want to cut this out. I don't know. But
That's funny.
but and I just said, "Oh, I see these people behind you." You said, "Oh yeah, I work with them." I said, "Okay, fine." But the next day when I saw that same lady,
Uh-huh.
and the family said all she said all day yesterday was silver spaceship, and she said it like 7 times. That was the only word she said.
Hmm.
And actually, so when I asked the man about that, he said, "Oh, I think they're Arcturians." And when I looked, I had never heard of Arcturians. I looked them up. They help people transition supposedly.
Interesting.
And
I
then
didn't know
she
that.
had, me too. I mean, that was,
Oh.
that's the only time I've seen that. So it was interesting that what happens to me, I think this is kind of how we're all connected.
Hmm.
It's a way to say what I'm doing affects my patients, and we're all so connected that my team, my spirit team, is helping her in whatever way. And if she
Hmm.
needed that silver spaceship, that's who was coming.
So let me ask, yeah, I get that. Whatever our personality is comfortable with is what the other side will make happen for us so that it's smoother. Have you ever felt that the families of the people that are there, are they difficult? Do they usually show up? Are there usually loved ones there, or do the people check themselves in? I'm coming to Dallas, Texas, February 12th for a live event to read you, my audience, and bring through your loved ones, but also for those of you who are too young to have lost somebody close to you. I do a lot of life readings to give you life direction, career, relationships, your children, your parents, your health, your own abilities, whatever's affecting you right now. You can go to AllisonDubois.com for ticket information. I'm coming out Valentine's weekend to connect you with your loved ones. I'll see you then.
Oh, okay. Oh, you're talking about the family on the departed side.
For hospice,
Yes. Oh,
do
yes,
they,
absolutely. They're there.
so
Oh,
the,
yes.
okay, so you don't check yourself in, you've got your family as part of it in the spiritual journey. If you go to hospice, can they decide they
Oh,
want to go to your center, for instance, because they
oh,
want
I
the
see.
spiritual journey?
Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay. Um, so first of all, hospice is a philosophy. It's everywhere. It's
Hmm.
homes, it's nursing homes, it's assisted living. So it's everywhere. So if somebody wanted to have me as their nurse, yes,
Uh-huh.
they could ask for that.
Oh, I love that.
I only work though very part-time now. So
Right.
I only work a couple of weekends a month now.
How does that
But
work? What if they call in the middle of the night? Is it like when you have a baby and the doctor has to get out of bed and go? How does that
well,
work?
there's a whole we have a whole team. there's an on-call team, there's a nighttime team. They call that number. Yeah, that's how it
Okay.
works.
Oh,
Yes, yeah.
that's interesting.
When
Okay.
I first started, I was always, even though I was supposed to work 4 days a week only,
Uh-huh.
I was always finding out what's going on with my patients. I really could never put it down. I was so interested. I
Sure.
was so like, oh my gosh, I got to find out what's happening with my patients. I was overworking.
Do you
I
ever
was,
have favorite patients where you
oh
have
yeah,
to be there, where you just
yes,
can't miss
oh
that
yes,
moment?
oh yes, yes, yes,
So
absolutely. Oh
so
yeah.
you can get a little VIP status in there where you're like, yeah, they're one of my VIPs. You got to let me know what
Oh,
they need for
y-
sure.
absolutely. And it can be a little dangerous too, right? Because you become part of the family.
Sure.
The hospicers become, because it depends on how long they're in your service, but
Sure. What's the
um,
typical time that somebody's in hospice? Like, what's the average?
average is way too short. It's only
Mm,
2 weeks.
okay.
But ideally, you want a couple months.
Hmm.
So my longest patient I ever had was 7 years.
Wow. Seven
So
years.
seven
Were
years,
they ready
and
for hospice? I mean, it sounds like maybe they would have been good in a condo on the beach in Florida for a while.
well, they kept declining, but very slow. And as long as they're declining, I mean, when there's other times when I've had to graduate people, like, okay, you
Yeah,
are just really better now. You really, you're doing so
right.
much better. You don't need hospice anymore. And that happens sometimes when people they come onto hospice and their meds change.
Yeah,
They get better when they have less medicine.
that's
I,
nice to
little
hear.
little secret.
That makes
Okay.
sense given our current state of this country.
Yes,
So,
right, right.
so I
Yeah, and
always wondered about hospices though, and I think it's part of what people fear. So that's why I'm asking you some of these questions so that people that have never experienced it understand that now you can come out of it. That you
oh
maybe
yeah,
you
oh
don't die.
yeah.
Maybe it's not a death sentence. I
That's
think
right.
that's how people see it.
Yes, and you can come and go as many times as you like. There isn't a limit.
So you can
But
check
usually,
yourself out. You could be like, I want to
yeah,
go die on the beach. I'm out of here. No
that's right. You
problem.
can do that. You can move to a different country. You can decide you want more treatment. Yeah, you're totally in control.
I wanted
But
to
at the
share this with you though. Last night we went out to one of our favorite country bars. And I won't name it because I didn't ask them if I could share this story, but they were a little freaked out that somebody died there last week
oh,
who was in his 80s. And he went there to see one of his favorite bands play. And I probably had the most odd reaction to them. But I said, that's amazing. That's the
yeah,
best send off. So he literally
I
died
know.
watching his favorite band, like right
Oh,
there. I said,
awesome.
that is a win in life. You did something
That
right if they're
is.
letting you go out like that. I thought that
I
was great.
know. It's true.
It's
And then one of the,
perspective. Some people would see that and be mortified by it. I saw it as how awesome is that? That's the best
how
story to tell
awesome
on the other side when you
that
say how
is.
you died.
That's right. And the whole
Yeah,
idea of having a good death and what is a beautiful death. I mean, there's a
right.
whole thing about that. What makes a beautiful death?
He was in a
That's
vibrant, happy environment on a Saturday night, whooping it up with his wife. I mean, that sounds pretty good. And she was very grateful that he got to go the way he did. So
oh wow.
she was understanding that this was a gift.
Oh,
So
lovely.
I thought that was great. I love hearing stories like that. It's perspective because a lot of people would look at that and say, oh my God, how horrifying for everybody there. It's like, really? I'd be like popping open champagne, like, well done, my friend. I mean, that's pretty
Yes.
amazing. And we had a friend who we used to lovingly refer to as the food king because he was in the seafood industry. And he was only 49 at the time. And he flew to Chicago to make a deal with another company. And they were out to lunch. And anybody that knew him knew how vivacious he was and how much he loved food and how much he enjoyed wheeling and dealing. Died right there at the table having lunch. I was like, well, that
Awesome.
had to be a
Yes.
free dinner for everybody in the house that at that moment. But it's how he would have wanted to go. I think he would have wanted to be here longer, but that is a good way to go. It was eating what he loves, being with people he respects and enjoys, and it gives him a cool story to tell on the other side, which was totally him. So,
Yeah.
do you find that to
Oh
be
yeah.
true with when
Oh,
you hear those stories?
Oh, absolutely. Yes. I mean, and to make the death again as beautiful as possible, to me, when somebody's like on their deathbed,
Uh-huh.
I like to encourage beautiful colors. I like to encourage music, whether it's chanting, whether it's whatever
Music's
kind of nice
important.
music,
Yeah.
music, aromatherapy, um, flowers, so
Hmm.
that it's a sacred space. And I always tell the families, when you walk in the room and you can feel it, it's palpable. You can
Hmm.
walk in and you feel the angels. Nobody
Yes.
dies alone. Nobody. There's always the family, they're part of the family and the
Yes.
angels there, and they surround. And um, so when people, and usually the patients see the angels too.
Hmm.
Um, and on occasion, I've walked up to a bed. Again, if I get the close, I feel that, I just start seeing the angels too. And I say, well, um, I just say something like, do you believe in angels? And they say, oh, yeah, they're right here. They've been here for weeks. Yay. It's like a confirmation.
I love that.
Yeah, no, it makes to have it all sacred and
Hmm.
special. Not the news. You don't keep the news
No.
on. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
that is like I try to steer people away from that. I also encourage people to have their pets be
Yes.
part of it, to
Pets
be able to
really do
say
heal.
goodbye.
Yes.
Yeah, and to say goodbye.
Hmm.
One time I was at a death,
Uh-huh.
and there was a man. He just died, and he died doing a wonderful thing. He loved brandy, and his family said they were going to do, and it wasn't even really that near death, but
Uh-huh.
they decided they were going to toast him. And so they all got their little glass of brandy, and they gave him a little dropper of brandy in his mouth because he really couldn't swallow a whole big amount.
Yeah.
And they just said, congratulations, or here's to you, or whatever. And they gave it to him, and he died right away.
I
And it's
love
like,
that.
how was wonderful is that?
Right.
Then across the street. And then I arrived. A golden retriever across the street was a
Uh-huh.
friend with that man who just died. And she came over. She kind of like pushed her own screen door over. She came into over to the house and she went upstairs. She jumped on the bed with the man who had just passed and she gave him a kiss and then she left again.
Oh.
So that's so important.
Animals
Dogs,
are
they know.
empaths. It's
Oh yeah.
interesting. People always say, why do you call them familiars? And I say, because it's your psychic extension. They know you, they feel you, they know when you're in need, and when you're going through something, they want to be beside you. So,
Yes.
with children who lose a parent or a sibling, I always tell the person I'm reading, a pet. I said, take them to a shelter, see what animal they gravitate towards, because the other side will help them pick one that
Yes.
reminds them of the person who died. And it's
Yeah.
the one thing they can cling to heal internally in a way that a psychiatrist can't always do, and a parent trying to say the right thing can't always do. It's an unspoken language that takes place between the animal and the person.
Yes. Beautiful. I love that idea.
So
Yeah.
I love your idea. I always say with the senior centers, I'm like, put margarita machines in there. If I'm old and I'm in a senior center, I want access. I mean, I've paid my dues. I'm old enough for everything at this point. I'm not getting
That's right.
carded for anything. If they're diabetic, give them skinny margaritas. There's a way,
Yeah.
people. There's a way.
Yeah.
But if
Well,
they're
yeah.
going out, they want to watch the movies they watched when they were young together with their generation. They want to
Huh.
listen to their music. They want to have
Yeah.
a cocktail, and they want to be able to
Yes.
be them. And
That's right.
I think it's a little sad. I think it's why people are afraid too to die,
Mhm.
because they
Yeah.
know once they go into an assisted living situation that that's the end, that they're in
Yeah.
the final stretch. And I
Yeah.
think they fight it because they don't want that. They don't want to go. And
Yeah.
I always think they need to have some sort of a reshuffling when it comes to seniors, so there's more life around them than death. And the
Mm.
death that happens in a building leaves indelible marks. When we go visit my mother-in-law, for instance, and we walk in,
Oh, yeah.
it's hard for me to breathe because I can feel the sickness and I can feel the death. and it doesn't feel lively, even though they really try at this place to make it beautiful, and they've got a restaurant in it and alcohol and stuff like that. But
Yeah.
to me, I can feel the death. So I guess if you're not as sensitive, maybe it wouldn't affect you as much, but anybody that is, which you're more likely to be towards the end of your life as you
Yeah.
start going towards the end of being here, you become more sensitive. So
Right.
I like your balance in your hospice. The flowers,
Yeah.
that conveys life to you.
Yes.
It gives your brain and your senses a message that this is a good thing. I'm in a good environment. The music's so important in helping them
Yes.
transition, and it needs
Yes.
to be music from when they were young, the age they're going to revert to when they die. And
Hmm.
I love it when women come through that died elderly and they'll say to their husband, throw my clothes out. I'm 24. I would never wear that now. And I don't want to see it in your closet anymore. So I do think it's funny. They go back to this
Yeah.
vibrant state,
Yep.
the living seem programmed to think of the dead as something scary or uh, in their form of death, like
No.
they're carrying the death with them. And that's not the way it is at all.
No, I know. They're vibrant, alive souls.
Yes.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, I had a boyfriend once and his mother had just passed. He said, can you tune into her? And all she did, she got a mirror. She showed me the mirror. She said, I'm beautiful again. And this
I
is just like just moments after her death. I'm
love
beautiful
that.
again.
That's
Yeah.
great.
Yeah. Um,
So you've never had a problem with the families that come in, though. They're usually pretty great with the person that's dying to sit there with them and know what they need.
oh, oh, well, no. No, no, of
No.
course there's problems.
Yeah.
After
Okay.
over 20 years. Oh
You're
yeah.
going to have
But
stories.
well, yeah, that I mean, part of what my job, right,
Hmm.
is to help them come to terms that this
Right.
is happening, that in it, and it's a sacred time. I always go back to this is sacred and special
Yes.
and to
Yes.
be present. And there isn't a lot to do
Hmm.
usually. I mean, yes, they have to give medicine and turn them and keep them clean and all that, but basically it's being very present.
Right.
And so by being present, then you get to tune in with them who's passing. You might get to tune in to the other side. You might tune in to all the angels that are around there. So it's
Hmm.
really beautiful that way.
Yes.
Also, by having ideas of whether it's flowers or whatever it is, that gives them something to do. Oh yeah, let me go get a new fresh thing of flowers. One of my
Right.
one of my very first patients, when he was dying, the family said, "Oh, he's Kim. This is one of my special ones, right?
Uh-huh.
Kim, he's dying. We think he's going to die today. Can you come today? And so when I got there, it was obvious he was dying. He was basically in a coma. And the family said, well, they were going to have their renewal of vows next week.
Mm-hmm.
But they said, we're going to see if we can do it today. So they called the minister. I went to collect the flowers. This reminds me of the flowers. I went to go collect flowers in the yards and I had a
Uh-huh.
little for the wedding to
Uh-huh.
so they could renew the vows. And the ring was ready. The new ring was all ready. So they got it. And the minister came. He must have been about 100. I think he married him the first time. I don't know. He was very,
On the
he
Titanic.
was
Yeah.
really tiny, tiny man, and the gold package and everything. But the man, I'm just going to call him Dan,
Sure.
was asleep mainly through the whole wedding. They both had on though black pajamas with frills and everything, really, black satin pajamas. But when the minister said, "You may kiss the bride," he woke up. He told a joke of some sort
Uh-huh.
and kissed his bride, and then went back into a coma.
Wow.
Then I know, amazing that he. So he was hearing. So this is a affirmation. We always hear this. They always hear.
Yes.
Remember that they hear everything. So that's an example of he was listening to everything, but it took every last inch of strength
Energy, yeah, for him to
to
do that.
to right, right. And then he was saying he woke up a little bit later in the afternoon and kept saying, I was there all day, by the way. This was
Uh,
one of those all day ones.
sure.
uh, um, oh, there's four angels in a train. I see four
Hmm.
angels in a train. He just kept saying four angels in a train. Okay, and so that evening when he passed, um, he had actually walked a little bit. He was stubborn. He didn't want to use a walker, so they walked him to the bathroom. He
Uh-huh.
died before he got into bed. He died on the floor, and the family said, "Dad, you can't die on the floor." And so he got back in his body, I
Oh
guess.
my
He
gosh.
got on the bed and he died
Okay.
again.
Guess I'll have to live a little
I
longer.
have to get into
That's-
bed. Okay, I guess I will. And then the family went outside and looked in the sky, and in the clouds was four angels in a train.
Oh, I love that. That's amazing. Those are
Yeah.
beautiful stories. Do you and you write these stories so
Yeah,
that
I
people
do.
can
I've
read
started a
them?
book. Yeah, I've started a little book. I need to
Well, you'll have to
um
come back when you've got that book ready for my
okay.
listeners because I'm sure they would love to read your stories. And
Okay.
I find people get hurt when thinking of they'll leave the room and the person dies.
Yeah.
The child leaves the room or the spouse leaves the room and they'd
Yeah.
been there for days or weeks. And it's in that moment they go to get coffee that the person dies. And they feel like they let them down and they weren't there. And I always say, no, don't you understand? They loved you so much that their soul kept holding on while you were next to them. And when you left, they were able to let go. That's a gift. Do you find that to be the
Oh,
case as
yes,
well?
absolutely. Totally in agreement with that. I love the way you frame that though. It's beautiful. I'm going to use
Thank you.
that.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Do you do you have any advice for people who are drawn to being healers or
Uh-huh.
hospice nurses? Because I think it's a
Okay.
calling
Yeah.
for some people and
Right.
they don't know how to know when it's right for them, I guess.
Yeah. I think it takes a little maturity.
Hmm.
You don't
I
want to be a
agree.
brand new nurse to be a hospice nurse
Right.
or a healer, really.
Right.
Um, and you have to have, in my opinion, the spiritual outlook has to
Uh,
be so that you can understand that people really don't die.
right.
You have to understand that there is life. There's always a life, and they're just becoming more vibrant. So I think that is helpful because if you get sad, like I know some people who can't stay in as a hospice nurse because it's too sad. They
Right.
feel like, oh my gosh, there's now they're going to die again.
Hmm.
See,
I
to
get
me,
it.
it's like, oh my gosh, they're gonna, oh, I congratulate. I think of hallelujah, blessings,
Yeah.
congratulations, you did it. That's what I think. And
Yeah.
when they tell me that they
So
passed,
yeah, I think so too. I don't know that everybody, for my listeners especially, when I was 20, yes, I could talk to the dead, but the difference between a 20-year-old medium and a 40-year-old medium or a 60-year-old medium is the older you are, the more reference you have. Your
hmm
vocabulary is larger, you have more life experience, you have felt this before, so you're able to put a term to it in readings, which is why in our profession, it's one of the few professions where the older you get, the better you become. The younger
uh-huh,
you are, the more limited you are. And people don't
uh-huh.
seem to get that, to understand it.
Yes,
You have to
yes,
start young to learn, but you're not going to be at your best when you're 20, for
that's right.
instance.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. I
So,
totally believe that. Yes.
so where can my listeners find more information about you or contact you?
Okay. Well, I have a website, mediumkim.com. you know and I also have a YouTube channel
Yep.
that Medium Kim, and I do hospice. I have put hospice stories on there. I have
Love it.
different things I talk about, um, and I talk about energy work. Sometimes I have guided meditations. So yeah,
Great.
that's what.
You have guided
Yeah.
meditations. I think people would be interested in taking part in that and learning more about
Yes.
hospice, especially if someone they love is ill and they need to
Yes.
mentally prepare themselves for it. I think you could be very instrumental in making it a much sweeter exit.
Yes. I mean, well, that's the goal. I mean, it is a passion of mine. Obviously, if I wouldn't be doing it this long
Of course.
if it wasn't a passion. Um, And yeah, I just love that the spiritual part of it is what I like. You know,
Absolutely. And
that's what draws me there.
I hear that, and you've got some stories that have me gripped, so I want to hear more. But Kim, thank you for sharing your story with us. And
You're
next week
welcome.
on The Dead Life, you'll hear from Jacob Cooper, whose life was changed when he had a near-death experience at the age of 3. Thank you for joining me. I'm Allison Dubois, and to all of my believers out there, don't stop believing.